Don't drag my feet. I got callous hands, bruised to the bone. When the barren land, sink or swim, boom or bust.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Nate, and today I have an awesome guest, a very good friend of mine, Mr. Tim Rowland. Tim, thank you for coming, brother.
Oh yeah, appreciate it having me.
Tim Rowland is a master chef and a master knife maker, and we're very lucky to have him as a friend because he makes super cool knives for the shop, and these are all his own designs. We sell them here at the shop, and so you should definitely come check them out. But Tim, tell our viewers a little bit about your history and how you got started in knives, but also your chef career.
Sure. So professionally, I was doing, commercial kitchen work in high-end hotels, luxury resorts, big banquet halls, all that kind of stuff for almost 24 years. And about halfway through that, in Atlanta at the Renaissance Waverly Hotel, I was the chef de cuisine for the specialty restaurant down there. We have a giant knife show every single year down at the Cop Galleria, which is connected to it. It's called Blade Show.
Yeah.
It is the biggest knife show on earth. There are more custom knife makers that go there than any other show anywhere else. Well, one year I was down there and I was doing like just replacement handles for some of my chef knives and stuff. I've got medium-sized mitts, so not everything fit my hands right. So I was redoing handles, and there was a custom knife maker that was at that show, and we were putting on a buffet. One of my handles that I'd redone was on a knife out there, and I had a cook out there doing some prime rib. He's just carving up some stuff. The knife maker saw it, liked it, and asked who had made the knife. Well, I didn't make the knife. I wasn't making knives at the time. I was just doing handle work. And he asked to speak to me, told me that he liked the work, said that it was good quality, that I obviously took pride in it, and had I ever made a knife myself? I said, no, never tried, not really looked into the metallurgy or anything like that. And he's like, I'll be back in 10 minutes. He came back, and this gentleman who I still have never seen again. He was an older gentleman. I don't know if he passed along or not, so I've never been able to thank him, unfortunately. But he came back like 10 minutes later, and he handed me a raw bar of steel. And it was basically like, all right, I'll see you next year. That needs to be a finished knife. Nut up or shut up, basically.
Whoa. That just gave me goosebumps.
Dude, so I'm never one to back down from, a good challenge. And I was like, all right, game on. So I made a knife out of it, and it was not pretty. It was not the best thing on earth, but I made a smaller chef's knife, and that kind of just kindled the fire. And from then, God, it's been about like 8 years now that I've been making knives, specializing in Japanese style kitchen knives, other kitchen knives, outdoor knives, and now for you guys here, all sorts of crazy zombie tactical, take care of, the neighbor next door if something goes down, self-defense stuff. But yeah, that was kind of like wrapping it all up. It was a challenge. I'd been doing handles, and then somebody challenged me to make the whole knife.
That's a really cool story, Tim. It's not every day that you hear something like that, where somebody puts you to the test and challenges you to step outside the box and do something you've never done, and then like, I'll see you next year with your first knife. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean.
So now you're like a master knife maker. And
I consider myself pretty good.
Yeah, you are. The quality and workmanship of your knives is incredible. And I tell people this all the time. Your knives are not just pretty, they're practical, they're functional. For example, we have 4 knives here on the table right now. I have the first one we're going to show off.
Yeah.
I have one of those. It's more of an EDC knife.
Yep.
Right?
That's my, basically it's just the standard defense tool. It's, you know, there, put it with an ulti-clip or whatever, hidden, discreet, and, you know, when you need it, it's there. Hopefully you don't ever need it, but better to have and not need than to need and not have.
Yeah. So, when you make a knife, how do you come up with, the design?
Okay.
Like, and what prompts you to make a knife? Like,
Sure. All right, so if there's a need of myself or one of my customers or just something that I see in the market that I think I could make my own version or humbly try to improve upon or just make more my flavor for that intended purpose, that's where I'll start. And it's got to be something that's kind of up my alley. If it's something that I don't really know that much about, I will do a ton of research on it first. I'll make a couple different prototypes, put them into hands of professionals or avid hobbyists in whatever that field is. Say it's bushcrafting or you know, a chef's knife. That's something that I have a lot of experience with, so I knew exactly what I wanted to do with each of my models there. I knew what was going to be comfortable in the hand, its intended purpose, the grind geometry that needed to be there. But with self-defense or hunting or outdoor type knives, it has to be something that I play around with a little bit.
yeah.
So
I mean, even just on this everyday carry knife, you know, look at the spine on that. I mean, you could pry a Ford Ranger off the ground with this, you know? It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And the consistency on your knives, the geometry of everything, that's one thing that I've learned over the years. You know, knife making is an art. It really is an art. And to make it all come together is not an easy task, and to do it repetitively. Like I was holding two of your fighters the other day.
Yeah.
Check this thing out.
Yeah, so that's my Shidori fighter. For any of the nerds out there, you'll probably know what a Shidori is. If not, go watch Naruto.
Yeah, that's bro, your work is absolutely incredible. The consistency, the symmetry.
Yeah.
And that really comes from
So
just
repetitive,
repetitive practice.
It's a lot of muscle memory. It's a lot of mistakes and getting better at the craft. You know, in my shop, underneath workbenches and there's boxes, there's all sorts of spent, you know, blades that just, you know, you sneezed when you were fucking grinding. Took off too much, so, you know, it went away. There's mistakes. Although there is a saying in the custom knife maker world that knife makers don't make mistakes, we just make smaller knives. we just keep going until it's where we want it to be, and it might not be what we started with, but we still got something cool at the end.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we don't have any of your chef knives here today, but if you want to see what they look like, check out Tim's Instagram page, Rowland Cutlery. And then he's also got a new website, www.rowlandcutlery.com. And that you can also go there and order his knives as well. They're absolutely incredible. And I think many of the people that I've spoken to in the knife community around here, even at Blade Show, when they talk about chef knives, your name always comes up. You make such a beautiful chef knife. And I engrave them all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right? Absolutely.
You put your logo on them here at the shop. And one of the things that I'm constantly perplexed by, oftentimes you'll drop off a batch of knives and I take them in the back And I'm literally just like, wow, look at this. And I'm admiring your work as I'm laser engraving it. And then I pull out the next one and I'm like, oh my God. You know, and you never cease to like blow my mind with some of the stuff you come up with and some of the stuff you do. I remember calling you one day and I was like, hey, I think your chef knife is broken. Like the whole tip is missing. Oh. And you were like, no, that's the design.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, you were like, yeah, it's a new thing.
That shape, if I'm remembering which one that was, it was a Nakiri, which is a Japanese style vegetable knife. So it's almost completely flat on the front.
Yeah.
Because you don't need a tip for most vegetables unless you're doing those, sideways cuts on an onion or something like that.
That's funny. That's funny. And then I started looking at it after you told me. And I was like, oh, I see. So like every knife has a purpose, right?
Every knife, yeah. And I fell in love with Japanese kitchen knives when I was in professional kitchens. They did something for me, man. You picked one up, it felt like an extension of your hand. They just seemed to perform better. I liked the aesthetics of them. So that's what I primarily focus on. And I think that the Japanese themselves, they don't do anything unless it is to perfection. They will keep refining and refining and refining and make something that is 100% purpose driven. So that's where you get all those crazy shapes that they have. In a Western or European style kitchen knife set, you might have like 6 or 7 standard patterns of knives. And the Japanese have 80 to 100 different Japanese like blade shapes. For cutting eel, for instance, they have like 4 different shapes just for cutting eel, and that knife is not used for anything else. Yes. Because there has to be one for cutting saltwater eel. There's one for freshwater eel. There's one for going down and breaking through the spine, and it's a chisel point. They even have a spike where they will nail its head and then skin it.
Wow.
So that always intrigued me. And so that's where a lot of the kitchen knife stuff that I do comes from. And I did the handles to like redo the Japanese handles. They're all hidden tang, and they kind of do like this octagon shaped handle. It's called a wa handle, and that's what I was originally rehandling before I did this kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna pop up some pictures here in the video when our viewers watch it, so they can see all these knives that you're talking about.
And that was the beginning of Rowland Cutlery. Was I was just making a bunch of like custom wa handles for people to rehandle their Japanese blacksmith knives, and then it carried on into the actual blades.
Let's talk about the coolest knife on the table. Well, they're all really cool, but
we have to go on with your lineage.
Yeah, the Cutlery. Wow. And I didn't even know this. You told me this the other day, that this is a pattern from India.
Yeah, so the Cutlery, now, I don't know all the history about it, but I'll tell you what I know is that it was carried by the Gurkhas. A lot of them had even more recurve into it, and it was basically designed to be able to decapitate from horseback.
Yeah. Well, that it can do. I am certain of it. Look at the spine on this one. That is incredible. How long does it take you to make a knife like this? Like start to finish, if you were just making one.
If I'm only making one and not doing it in a batch, you got 4 hours alone just in a tempering oven, and you've probably got an hour of the austenizing, which is when you're bringing the blade up to the critical temp and quenching it. So you've got 5 hours just in heat treatment processes, grinding the raw steel, profiling it, drilling it, and then doing all of your grinds afterwards. if we're not talking kydex worth, sheath worth, I'd say there's probably 9 to 10 hours
Yeah.
of work into a larger knife like that. A smaller knife, maybe 6 hours, 7 hours total.
And how much do you charge for a knife like this?
So a larger knife like that, if it is with phenolic materials like this burlap micarta, those are typically going to be in the 8 to 9 range. If it had some of the exotic woods that I really love to do on some of my other outdoor knives that aren't going to be as purpose built for, its crazy strength. You want that to be able to go out in freezing temps, hot temps, whatever, and still get the job done.
Yeah.
Those are a little bit more expensive. I import crazy exotic woods from all around the
Not
world.
just woods. Like I've seen you make handles out of mammoth tusk.
Yes, I use mammoth tusk. I'll use mammoth molar, crazy different carbon fiber weaves. I like different shit.
Yeah.
I like using stuff that not everybody else is going to use for no other reason besides I think it's cool.
Yeah. Well, and right now you're making me one of these fighters.
Yes.
With a handle material that I chose.
Yes, some crazy hybrid stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty wild stuff, and we'll be sure to showcase that to y'all whenever it's done. But I wonder what makes you keep wanting to do this. This is hard work. It's labor intensive, and I don't think that people really realize what goes into making a knife from start to finish with your own design.
Sure.
It's a lot of work, and I imagine that when you tell someone that this knife is $900, you probably get some pushback sometimes.
Sure.
And I feel like when you tell me $900, I'm like, oh wow, okay. For your work, this work, that's very reasonable in my eyes. And if this was something that I sought and I wanted it custom and you would make it for me for $900, I'd buy it in a heartbeat. I think people don't really realize really what goes into making your own knife. From like the design to actually grinding to then heat treating and then making a handle, there's so much finishing involved.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So, from the very, very beginning, like I was saying earlier, when I'm coming up with that design and having to do that R&D, so to speak, to make sure, do I like it? Do I need to redo the design? All of that starts with just something in my head. Then I go to some CAD programming. I completely CAD draw this out. And then I print it out. I make a template of it. How does the template feel in my hand? That might be version 1, and I might scrap it right then and go back to reshaping handle, reshaping blade, because as I'm holding it, it doesn't feel like it organically flows or whatever.
And I remember we did that. Remember when we built those Damascus coupons for my cousin's wedding?
Yes.
I remember we drew the pattern and on paper, my design, right? I drew it on paper, and then we put it on a piece of micarta, and we traced it on a piece of micarta, and then we cut the micarta, or we ground it to the shape of the blade.
Yep.
And then we were playing with it, feeling it out, and we were like, okay, yeah, this is the design.
Yeah.
And from there, we scribed it on a piece of
the raw steel.
Raw steel. And I remember thinking while we were doing all this, like, whoa, this is a lot of work. You can't make mistakes, right? Like, you once you get to a certain stage, if you start making mistakes, well, then
you get a smaller knife.
you get a smaller knife. Yeah, but I've made several knives now, and with your help.
Yeah.
And they all turn out pretty because you usually help me finish it.
Right? That's background work. Tell everybody that you made it.
Good. But yeah, I just remembered when we were making those knives, how overwhelming like all the different processes are, and you got to remember to do stuff in a certain sequence. It was such a fun experience, and I remember thinking like, oh my God, I think I'm hooked.
So that's part of the drive of wanting to keep doing it. It's fun.
Yeah.
And constantly adding something new to a lineup and maybe retiring an old pattern or something like that is it's fun chasing that high, right? And sitting in front of a grinder and freehand grinding this stuff, it's an adrenaline rush for me. Some people might hate that and they want to figure out, how can I automate that process? You know, can I use a jig to grind it so I have perfect grind lines? And hey, there's certain instances where you need to do that because, you know, maybe you have a very complex shape that you wouldn't be able to freehand it. You know, you'll have people out there that go, oh, that's cheating if you do this, that, and the other. It's not cheating. It's just a way of getting your desired outcome.
Yeah.
But the freehand grinding for me, there's an adrenaline rush.
Well, I've watched you do it, and I've watched you in amazement. Just how steady your hand is, so close to that belt. Yeah. You know, and the slightest nick of your knuckle on that belt will rip flesh off.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a 36 grit ceramic belt that I'm hogging off the raw steel with.
Yeah.
And if that comes around and grabs your knuckle, you know about it.
You do, instantly.
Yeah.
And you probably won't do it again.
No.
Not on purpose.
You get reminded later on when you're cleaning your blade with acetone and it hits the cut.
Yep. Yeah, well, Tim, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming and sitting down here.
Yeah, man.
I know that you have a stupid, crazy, busy schedule, and for you to come here and hang out with us, we really appreciate it. We cannot wait for the holiday traffic to come into the shop and see these knives.
Yeah.
I think people are going to be blown away by them, and I can't wait to see what the next batch is going to look like.
Yeah, well, I've got some cool stuff planned for the next batch, and I think that whoever gets some of these, you know, stuck in their stocking or, you know, underneath the tree, they're going to be pretty damn happy.
I totally agree, and we've got some cool custom kydex here also that Tim put together using some of the fun kydex we have here at the shop, and yeah, these knives are absolutely next level, man. The quality and craftsmanship of them is pretty much as good as it gets, you know, and you've become a master at it.
I appreciate it. The kydex, all that, you know, it adds to it. You get all the cool patterns. You know, I don't think Ryan's in earshot right now, so he probably doesn't know about his with a Peppa Pig kydex, but you know, he's gonna love it for Christmas.
Ryan's standing right behind the camera. Oh, that's funny. Well, Tim, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, man. Hey, thank you for having me.
Love you, bro. I appreciate you so much. Guys, check out Tim's Instagram page. Check out his website. We'll link the links down in the description below. And yeah, have a look at his stuff. It's absolutely incredible. Tim is an artist. He is a genius. And we love having him around here. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next one.